It may have lifeline. This is just everybody fully aware of that. So good to have everybody again here this morning. Let's go around the room real quick. Around the table first, introduce ourselves, where you're from, the city you're from, and that kind of we'll ask the same of folks in the audience. So start way down there with Natalie and Mark.
Excuse me, a quick announcement. We have folks on Zoom who aren't able to hear us unless you speak directly into the microphone. So please go ahead and scoot your microphone close to you and make sure you're speaking right into it so we can all hear you. Thank you.
Okay, so you have to really hear.
There we go. That's it.
Maybe they should come to the meeting. Okay. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, Adeline Graham with Hillsborough Transit.
Morning, Sean Sullivan with the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council.
David Wood, District Secretary of DOT District 7.
Good morning, Beth Alden, Hillsborough TPO Director. Good morning, Gina Driscoll, representing for Pinellas, St. Petersburg City Council.
And my name is Dave Eggers. I'm vice chair of the group here and sitting in this chair today. And I'm a county commissioner for Pinellas. And I'm representing the Northern District. Quick lands and for the Pinellas.
Good morning, Gary Bradford, newly elected commissioner from Pasco County District 4. I'm here at the invitation of Commissioner Mariano.
Pasco County Commissioner Jack Bryant.
Hi, Carl McKiska, Pasco County Appeal Staff.
Good morning, Scott Perry, Pasco County NPO staff.
Dana Santos, Communications and Outreach for Pinellas.
Sorry about that. We'll start in the back over there, the blue shirt.
Randy DeChezo, TBRPC.
Elizabeth Watkins, Hillsborough TPO staff.
Chelsea Rivera for Pinellas.
Todd Pillars, Legislative Assistant to Commissioner Bradley.
Sharon Calvert, President, Fix Our Roads First.
Justin Hall at DOT District 7.
Heather Sobush, PSTA.
Brian Hunter, SDOT.
Name Galley at DOT.
Rob Kersey, Finish Consulting.
Henry Queen, Tampa Bay Business Journal. Tom Allen, City of St. Petersburg.
Rebecca Meissner, Petersburg.
Johnny Coors, Pasco NPO Staff.
Morning, Johnny Wong, Westboro TPO staff.
And for the folks that are online, if you're an elected official or staff member, if you don't mind introducing yourself as well, please.
I'm Pat Kemp, Hillsborough County Commissioner and a member of the TMA.
Anybody else? Any other electeds?
My name is Joseph Citro, and I'm chair of Tampa City Council.
And if there are no more electeds, Andy Taylor, legislative aide to Pasco County Commissioner Seth Waitman, and he will be joining you virtually in the next 2 minutes. Thank you.
And David Green from T-BARTA is here.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for taking a few minutes to do that. Anybody in the room for public comments? Yes. Right down at the end down there, if you don't mind, and find a microphone, introduce yourself. You have 3 minutes to let us know what's on your mind.
Good morning, I'm Sharon Calvert. I live in Tierra Verde. I'm president of Fix Our Roads First. I just want to make sure that this organization knows what has occurred in Hillsborough County. The Hillsborough County TPO inserted into the Unified Work Program a grant that they requested the federal government for the Boulevard concept. The Boulevard concept, when you did the 2045 regional LRTP, was at the bottom of the list of those surveyed. And they have now submitted a grant to the federal government, which I understand, to actually study tearing down parts of I-275 and replace it with a street level boulevard that would create congestion and havoc throughout Tampa Bay area. What I'd like to see from this board is a resolution rejecting this project. The interstate, that interstate has been paid for, it's been maintained by taxpayers throughout the Tampa Bay area. It's a strategic asset. And again, it would cause havoc. And it's a study, $1.2 million of your tax money to study something that basically is not going to happen. And this isn't the first time that the Hillsborough TPO has done something like this. When they removed the express lane toll lanes from the I-275 widening, I think that was several years ago. It had already been planned by the Expressway Authority it was funded to build the East-West Road that would have definitely helped those that live in New Tampa and Pasco County and others in the Tampa Bay region. So there's a real concern here from a regional perspective that these projects, you can think about tearing down roads when tens of thousands of people are coming to Tampa Bay. We're a seasonal tourist location, they're bringing their cars. The other ask that I would ask of this organization is to focus on the priorities of fixing our roads. They are the broadest used, largest asset of the state and the counties, and that needs to remain the focus. Focus on that first, because I think people are getting pretty upset with what we're seeing. So the other ask that I ask of this organization, I'll ask it of others, because there's so many planning organizations, you just trip all over each other's toes, is to stop the road diets in Tampa Bay. Fix our roads and stop the road diets, and please reject this project because you're paying for it. Your federal dollars are paying to look at tearing down part of an interstate that is used for everyone in Tampa Bay, and it's definitely a hurricane evacuation route for me and Tierra Verde, who had to evacuate during Hurricane Ian. So I hope that you will take those actions into consideration as you move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. All right. Is there anybody else? Yeah.
We also received a comment through email. May I read it?
Yes, go ahead.
This is from Andrew Morris in Madeira Beach. He states the lack of local transit funding has consistently been the issue in the Tampa Bay metro area that has held back public transit investment for decades. A regional MPO would not fix the local transit funding issue and would suffer from similar challenges that T-BARTA has faced. In 2016, voters in the city of Atlanta passed a half-penny sales tax to fund rail transit and bus transit improvements and expansions within the city of Atlanta. The city of Atlanta was able to put a half-penny sales tax on the ballot because of legislation that was enacted by the state of Georgia. If cities like Tampa and St. Petersburg were allowed to put a half-penny sales tax on the ballot for transit investment, it would easily pass. Then there would be local funding to improve PSTA bus service and park bus service, build rail transit between Tampa and St. Pete via that Howard Franklin Bridge, and build a multimodal center at Tampa Union Station for state-supported Amtrak service in Brightline. Even if it requires state legislation, cities in the Tampa Bay metro area should have the right to put a half-penny sales tax for transit investment on the ballot. With regards to Andrew Morris.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Good. Go ahead and get started. We have 10:30 kind of hard stop, so a couple of topics here and 2 or 3 things. So Chelsea's going to start with the review and approval of major regional transportation priority projects.
Mhm. Oh, you can turn the button right there.
All right. Okay. Technology, sorry about that. Good morning, Chelsea Valero with Ford Pinellas staff. So this time of year, we always take a fresh look at the major regional priorities that this group puts together and then advances to the Sun Coast Transportation Planning Alliance for incorporation into the broader regional priority list. As has been stated before, we're one of the top 20 most populated regions in the county, and the regional coordination of plans and priorities is incredibly important to our area. So the MPOs each individually prioritize projects, but we really look to this group to shine a light on those big regional projects that could really benefit from our collective advocacy. So again, this is done annually. The major projects that we advance help to advance our regional long-range plan, an image of which is up on the screen. And then there's a list of projects that have been funded because of the efforts of this organization. The Courtney Campbell Causeway Trail, Gateway Expressway, Sunrunner, and the list goes on. So we've had a lot of success by working together to advance these large projects. So these are the unfunded projects that we're seeking your action on today. A number of them remain on the priority list from the past because they're not yet advanced or they haven't yet to receive funding. And then there are 2 new projects that we're looking to have your action on today. The first is the I-75 interchange at Gibsonton Road in Hillsborough. There's I-275 express lanes from 375 up to Gandy Boulevard and Pinellas. The regional rapid transit in the 275 corridor. The intersection of State Road 54 and US 41 in Pasco. The interchange, phase 3 of the West Shore interchange. 2 of the phases of the West Shore interchange have received funding, but there is still 1 phase outstanding. So that's why that one is on the list. Replacement of Hart's heavy maintenance facility over in Hillsborough County, and then regional passenger rail transit connection between Tampa and Orlando. So those last 2, those are new priorities that we're looking to advance today. So today we're looking for your review and approval of the priority list that was included in your packet. And then later on this morning, we'll forward it to the broader group for their action as the SCTPA. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Chelsea? Any comments? Maybe she can back up. Yeah, that list on the screen, thank you. And I think it's the top 20 in the country. Is that this region is one of the top?
Yes, you're right. Sorry, I'll fix that.
No, that's okay. I just want to make sure that folks will wonder if it was state or country. So, Commissioner.
Thank you, Kevin. When I look at the heavy maintenance facility with Hillsborough Park, Pasco County just redid their own buses on both sides of the county. We paid for the whole thing. I don't know why we put that as far as transportation goes.
I would agree with your comment. I'm not quite sure. It is like you pick the one that doesn't seem to fit. I'm not sure I understand. Maybe somebody can share some thoughts on that.
Sure. Talk about that briefly. That is one of our top transit priorities. I think I have anything electronic close to the mic. So it is one of our top transit priorities. We cannot expand express bus services to connect to adjacent counties without addressing our basic needs of vehicle maintenance. And so it's an essential precursor to anything else that we would do for regional transit in the region. It's a significant investment. We supported the Sunrunner BRT project, which is entirely within Pinellas County, connecting downtown St. Petersburg to the beaches, because it's an essential part of a larger regional system. Hillsborough, our most essential part that will lead us ultimately, we hope, to a better regional system. At this point, it's the Hart maintenance facility. And we are seeking support from our neighbors because we'll be going after state funding, after federal funding to match local dollars to try to make this large investment happen.
May I add some content? That's perfect.
Yes.
So I appreciate the question, and that I appreciate your response. Just wanted to share that Hart Heavy Maintenance Facility, the estimated cost to replace it is $100 million, of which we have $75 million. We're also working actually in this, immediately now, applying for a grant, the RAISE grant, to get the additional $25 million that we have to get. We're also going after other grant funds like the Bucking Bus Facility Grant, which is also another $25 million that we're going to go after. So we are in the process of bridging the gap. We're fortunate through partnerships with FDOT, who is committed to approximately $50 million, as well as working with the TPO and Hillsborough County to pretty much, I say rob Peter to pay Paul, but what we're doing is transitioning funds from the work program that were assigned to bus replacement, and we've worked with our partners to reassign those dollars to help us to rebuild a heavy maintenance facility. So I just wanted, to share for, the listening audience as well as for you, since you asked a specific question, that we are moving forward and we're looking aggressively at finding dollars to move this project forward. As Beth stated, in order for us to build better system, we need a heavy maintenance facility that can have the capacity to work on more buses. Also one that currently our facility, when it rains outside, it rains inside. It's been in a state of disrepair for over a decade, so there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And then lastly, we are looking to transition from diesel to clean energy. So we're going to transition from a diesel fleet to CNG and then eventually to electric. So we need a facility that'll accommodate those types of vehicles as well. So hopefully my response is giving you a little more context as far as the project overall.
Sure. None on that. That's fine.
Excuse me, this is Commissioner Kemp. Hello. I'm having a lot of difficulty hearing. So I didn't even hear what the removal is. I've heard some of the conversation or what the question was initially.
Yeah, Commissioner Kemp, we will try to do better to talk into the microphone. We can hear very well. And so the last part of your comments were perfect. So if you pulled away from your microphone a little bit, then that's perfect. But we'll do a better job on this. And what we're talking about are the unfunded priorities. And the question is really whether the Hart's heavy maintenance facility, the replacement of it, needs to be on this unfunded priority list. And that's the conversation that we're having. The question was raised by Commissioner Mariano. I had a comment of I had the same question. Beth Alden has responded, and Emily LeGrand has also responded. So that's where we're at right now. Did you have any comments on that item?
Well, yes, because it's been an important, and I heard, I could hear most of what Ms. LeGrand said, so I'll just support that. But we've had other, I don't even know why it's different than the others. I mean, because we've had things like the Sunrail or the the BRT in St. Petersburg on the list in the past as well as a priority. So I don't really know why it's different, but the replacement of Hart's heavy maintenance facility probably would do more in terms of our expansion and ability to serve people in Hillsborough County more than almost any other priority in terms of being able to move people. We're very, very constrained now by the limited space, but also by the issues. It was a facility that we bought that was a 1950s trucking facility, apparently, when we took it over. And it very much constrains our ability to serve. And this is the most transit needy, transit used ridership population in the entire region is actually between USF and downtown. But this is a facility that would serve all of Hillsborough County, which, we have tremendous needs in that way in moving people.
I have Commissioner Mariano that wants to respond.
The explanation that you were very good, being just so far along with the funding and the ways. Like I said, we've done our design on our own dime, but with this project, we put it with the BRT that we supported. I'm pleased to see the technology and put it into it was, so I'll make a motion to approve.
Yeah, and I think to your comment of why it's different, I guess, people can have their own opinion, but we typically prioritize either transit opportunities or road infrastructure. Those are typically the things that we find on the unfunded priority list. And we talked about a heavy maintenance facility, as Commissioner Mariano mentioned. Most of the time we take care of that within our own county. So that's why the distinction is being at least asked about. There's been a motion to approve it or add it. Yes, Commissioner. Council.
Thank you. Does this body have a history of supporting facilities such as this?
Yeah, speak more.
So for example, and I'm new, so I'm trying to catch up here. So for example, was the Clearwater Multimodal Transit Center on this list at one point while we were looking for funding for that?
It was not.
So do we have precedent on a facility like this? Commissioner Eggers pointed out the distinct difference between a facility and an initiative such as Sunrunner or a road project. So I just want to make sure I understand why this one would be included, because I agree it is a different ask than what we're looking at.
Well, this is Whit Blanton. I will say that the PSTA Transit Center, the Intermodal Center was just funded, and it was funded partially by a race grant for $25 million. And Dallas County contributed up to $8 million, I believe, for that facility as well. I don't think it was ever on this list, but what we do strive to do is to have a specific project on this list where we know what the project is and we know what the funding sources could be. And kind of like the West Shore interchange that we all rallied around and supported, it's good to show that there's regional support for this project. So this is a specific project. And I do want to just point out, if there is another one on this list that that's the regional passenger rail transit connection between Tampa and Orlando. I did want to give just a little explanation why that's on the list. We want to show that there's regional support to bring Brightline high-speed rail to Tampa once it goes to Orlando. That's supposed to open in Orlando in the fall of 23. And we want to show that support, but we've also had conversations with Amtrak and with the state of Florida about supporting Amtrak development in the Tampa Bay area. So that's why we left that one a little vague. It's not a specific project, but I did want to speak to both of those items.
One question, I don't know who would answer, but just from a perspective of getting funds to this area, having this one on there, I guess the gap's 25 million, is that what I'm hearing? So how does that affect, this will affect us getting other funds to this area for other priorities? Because we don't really rank the priorities.
I think it's just showing regional support for a grant application. That's my assumption is what you're seeking with this.
That is correct. It's just some regional support, as I stated. We are moving forward. As a matter of fact, we have just closed our solicitation process to solicit for a project manager or program manager to help us move the project forward. So that is moving forward currently. We're just looking for some support from this body as we continue to go after grant.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm going to withdraw my motion. I do appreciate your explanation on getting support from us. I just don't think it should be on this list. I think maybe we should set up a separate list, a separate letter that I would support the get a race grant. But I think the points that you guys brought up are great, that it's not transportation, it is transportation related for a facility. If the race grant's the way to go, let's go give a letter of support for the grant, but not put on this list. So I do that.
That's your new motion.
That's my new
If I could more discussion, may I clarify the motion a little bit? Is your motion to approve the list without that one project, or is
without that one project, but we give them a letter of support for the race grant. So that we support it on.
May I?
Yes.
I'm fairly new to this as well. So when we have the unfunded priorities, is the expectation that afterwards this body funds the priorities? Do we fund any of them? I'm just gonna understand.
Sure, this is strictly an advisory list. Each of the NPOs has a list of priority projects that's adopted at public hearing. And this list is advisory to each of the NPOs. And it is also used to show support for discretionary grant applications. So what we're seeking to do here is to be transparent about the discretionary grant applications that we are likely to pursue. So for example, all of these would be things that we would bring to the attention of our legislative delegation. So that if they are in conversations with other officials, they're aware that these are essential needs for our region. So we're seeking to be transparent. If you don't look to support our initiatives, that's fine, but it is an essential building block for us.
Okay, I think the motion didn't say anything about not supporting the initiative. It was about not having it on this list. Transportation and or transit initiatives that we prioritized in the past, when we put down the list there and look at the rest of it. That's why I was asking about, number one, what's the difference? And also, how does it affect our, when we're looking at all the funds that are coming to our area, having this on there, how does that affect it in terms of potentially funding that one from wherever it's coming, and then I was told that that's not an issue. So, so anyway, the motion is on the table, but I have not heard a second on that motion. So,
May I add another point of clarity? So as far as the funding pots that we currently have commitments, we have $15 million from Hillsborough County toward the project. And we also have 25 million from the work program from GenDOT and 25 million, that helped me if I'm adding these up wrong, from the TPA. So, and we're putting some of our own dollars into it too. So our objective is not to ask this body for funds, it's just to share that we are moving this forward and that we have gotten commitment from our partners. We are short 25, but the 25 million that we have a deficit is not going to stop us from moving forward, because we are still moving forward aggressively, looking for additional dollars. The last thing I will say is that hopefully from this body's perspective, this could be viewed more as a regional project and not just a heart project, recognizing it is our heavy maintenance facility. However, a part of what we're doing, we also have a partnership with Hillsborough Community College to put a training center on our campus to train not only mechanics for transit on using electric bus fleets, but also the school system. And we went up to Tallahassee last year and meeting with them, it was clear that there was dollars assigned to electrifying school buses, but there weren't enough mechanics who were familiar with how to fix electric school buses. So we're also looking at opportunities to bring partnerships to our campus to train and also develop a workforce that can work on electric fleets. So there's a lot that we're looking to do in this $100 million to rebuild our campus. And hopefully you can see the value that it'll bring to the entire community. And then also, we do know we have service that goes from Hillsborough County to Pasco as well as Pinellas. So giving us the ability to upgrade our fleet, have more reliable service that we can provide to the entire region is also a part of why this facility is so important. So I just wanted to provide that additional context. Thank you.
I'm going to withdraw the motion if somebody wants to get it. I'm done.
yeah, I appreciate the second motion.
I make a motion to support most as stated.
Motion to support the list that's on the screen.
Good morning, team. This is Seth Waitman, Commissioner up in Pasco. I'm having a hard time hearing exactly what's going on. Can someone please clearly restate the motion, please?
there's a list of unfunded priorities, top unfunded priorities for the Tampa Bay region. There are 6 on that list. And there's a motion to approve that list. There's not a second yet. There was a previous motion to not include the Hart's heavy maintenance facility on this list, but to also provide a separate letter of support for the project. And that didn't get a second. And now there's a motion for this list, and there's not a second yet. So the only issue that we have on the list apparently of the 7 items.
I'll second that.
I may stir a hornet's nest here, but Hart, in my opinion, is more of a local project versus a regional project. I would consider supporting it on maybe a
Point
separate.
of order.
letter.
I just made a second to the motion.
No,
That was,
Commissioner.
I never got to finish, Commissioner.
Commissioner Kim, hold on. He had the floor and he was speaking, so I'm letting him speak and then I'll come to your second. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just for a clarity, because it was really jargled trying to hear, so I was trying to piece together the conversation in the room. I would support Hart, but separately. In my opinion, Hart's a local transit matter and not necessarily a regional matter. I understand the volume of folks that move around within that system, to Commissioner Kim's point, but I'm of the opinion that that's more of a Hillsborough management of that system.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. And now Commissioner Kim, you have the floor. Commissioner Kim? Are you there, Commissioner Kim? Because I don't hear you, I heard you.
oh, I'm sorry. I
Go
muted
ahead.
myself.
You have the floor.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I will second the motion on the floor to approve the list.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Kim. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the list. Are there any other comments? And we have 9 voting members, right? Okay, so we have 8 voting members. I'll just say, all in favor, say aye.
Point of order, can we have a roll call vote? And do we have a quorum in present?
We have eight members on the meeting. How many are in the room? 5 of the 9 members are in the room. And how many are online? 2. Staff, help me with this, 2 online. So. Who's the third? Okay, excuse me, I apologize. Commissioner, council member, et cetera, I apologize. So we have 8 members, 5 are here in the room and 3 are online, Commissioner Kim.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll do the roll call. Staff, will you help me with that, please, on the list? Ask for names and then the yes or no votes.
All right, Charles Cole,
Yes.
Councilmember Driscoll,
Yes.
Commissioner Mariano,
No.
Commissioner Bradford,
No.
Commissioner Kemp,
Yes.
Councilmember Cipro,
Yes.
the last one.
I wasn't called, Seth.
All right, Commissioner,
No.
And I'm a no. So we have like a beautiful system. We have a 4-4 vote. The unfunded priority list, as it stands and is proposed, is not passed. So we'll need another motion to really pass this through.
I'll go back to my previous motion. I will support the unfunded priorities list with moving out the replacement of parts having needs facility new, but I will
Speak into the good, again, thank you.
I'll support the unfunded priorities list without the replacement of parts having maintenance facility new with the letter of support though for that in a separate item.
Second.
There's a motion and a second, and that is to include the 5 of the 6 items on the unfunded priority list, leaving off the replacement of parts heavy maintenance facilities, at the same time provide a separate letter of support from the organization for the project. That's the motion and a second. All right, let's do another roll call, please.
Charles Cloak,
Yes.
Councilmember Driscoll,
Yes.
Commissioner Bradford,
Yes.
Commissioner Mariano,
Yes.
Commissioner Kemp,
No,
Commissioner Whiteman.
Support.
Support.
Okay, one second. Councilmember.
Yes. Sorry, yes.
And I'm a yes as well, so that motion carries the list of unfunded priorities as moved with a separate letter of support for the part heavy maintenance facilities.
Appreciate the letter of support. Thank you.
Our pleasure. So on the schedule, that effort was supposed to take 10 minutes. It took half an hour. So the election process is going to take no more than 2 minutes at the end. It says 10. So we have about 15 minutes or so to discuss this other little issue of MPO formation parameters and options for the Tampa Bay area. Again, a preliminary, really not even deep diving discussion, just a preliminary introduction to the concept. And perhaps at the end of that, just give any kind of direction to our staff about further work on the item. So I'll turn that over to Beth in this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We will need to keep this as an introductory conversation. So our plan is to provide you with some information that's in some ways a refresher for those of you who've been part of this conversation for a number of years. And then ask for what questions you have that you would like us to bring back more information in March. This item is on the agenda at the request of Commissioner Starkey and Long, who brought it up at our last meeting here in September. So I'm going to continue my findings for one of these slides. Appreciate it. So I'm going to just go over briefly some of the legal requirements about MPO formation and apportionment. So this is mostly from state law. The state law is a little bit more specific than federal law. So the decision about MPOs, the geographic area that they serve, their voting membership, this is determined by agreement between local units of government representing 75% of the population and the governor, including the largest central city or cities within the MPO jurisdiction. The geographic area is determined as part of that agreement. There's a statement in state law: to the extent possible, one MPO should serve one urbanized area. The governor and existing MPOs may determine that the size and complexity of the urbanized area warrants more than one MPO, which is the case across most of the board. The board size is restricted to between 5 and 25 members. The number of the members is determined on an equitable geographic population ratio. And so the way that that is typically done is after every census, the MPO would review the population estimates that have changed for each of the jurisdictions, and then have a discussion on the board about, is our board adequately representing the populations in each of those jurisdiction groups. The voting members of the board shall be, this is not optional, shall be elected officials of general purpose local governments. That's not possible. An MPO may also include members of statutorily authorized planning boards and transportation operators. I believe the language in the statute is an official such a, like an independent authority, transit authority, for example, like CART or PSTO. If we were to create a tri-county MPO in our area, one of the questions that I have is the language about the central city or cities within the MPO jurisdiction. Would you end up looking at just the tri-county areas, largest central city, or do we need to get the approval of the largest central city in each of the 3 existing MPO areas? I'm not sure that that's super clear, and it's something we have to research a little bit. A few other legal requirements, so about how the board is formed. County commissioner is at least 33%, unless there's a transportation agency represented on the board, in which case it's 20%. Transportation authorities may be voting members. And then there's some options for, we have a lot of local governments. There's some different options for how seats can be provided to smaller local governments. You can have rotating seats. You can have groups that are formed and then elect a representative among them to serve on your MPO board. And then we also have a statement about non-voting advisors. To the extent possible, MPOs shall seek appointments of non-voting representatives from FDOT, multimodal transportation agencies, and major military installations. Okay, I'm not speaking. All right, is this better? There we go. Okay, so just a few years ago, TBARTA did kind of a deep dive study for us. Can you hear me now? Okay. State legislature earmarked some funds for this study. TBARTA administered those funds, hired a consultant. We were all involved. Those who were part of this group at that time were involved in looking at what the consultant came up with, including best practices research around the country, reviewing what our practices are here, identifying some opportunities for improvement. That all resulted in this 2019 MPO Regional Coordination Report. Go ahead and flip to the next slide. So there were a lot of topics that the consultant dug into. There's a lot of things to think about here. So regional revenue, and there we were talking about revenue for transportation projects and regional priorities, which we just alluded to with our priority list. Internal operations. Local versus regional. What do we mean by what's local and what's regional? And transit has always been a subject of a lot of debate in our regional groups of what is regional and what is local. Engaging the public effectively, project prioritization, dispute resolution, internal communication, working with state agencies, how do we coordinate with land development, how do we ensure resiliency, a lot of topics. The consultant identified 3 ways to move forward. Pathway 1, improve what we have. Pathway 2, rearrange functions. And pathway 3, changes to structures. And then they produced, I'm sorry, go ahead and move to the next slide. And then they produced a matrix that laid out how those different pathways performed with regard to a lot of these issues that they listed on the previous slide. So ultimately, after all of those issues for the 3 pathways were workshopped with this group and a lot of other stakeholders from around the region, the recommendations were a 2-part approach to implementation. So the first phase would be basically right now, so kind of coming on the heels of the 2020 census. And the second phase would be coming on the heels of the 2030 census. So the recommendations for right now were that we should, as a group here, assume greater control of technical analysis and data collection. So, for example, that means working more closely with districts who's been sponsoring our regional travel demand model for many years. Create regional local agency seats on the TMA leadership group, which we still haven't done, although we're very happy to be sitting with us as part of this dialogue. Develop a simple citizens advisory committee, create a single regional performance-based planning process, formalize the regional transportation plan element. Chelsea showed you in a slide just a moment ago, but bring that forward and adopt it into all of our long-range transportation plans. Look at increased authority for this group and greater direct coordination with state leadership, and then develop a collective regional funding strategy, which I think was the elephant in the room for a lot of our conversations. It's still kind of the elephant in the room with TBARTA. So there's a lot of things that we can work on right now that would improve our regional coordination, our regional planning, our regional focus on priorities, and our ability to bring regionally significant projects to fruition. These were the things that the consultant recommended to us. The recommendation for the post 2030 census was look at the voting structure at that point. Single MPO policy board with multiple MPO technical advisory committees. So, for example, we might have a technical advisory committee in each one of the counties to do that on the ground coordination, but a single policy board for the tri-county area. So my impression from the consultant was they were saying that we have a lot of opportunities that we can build on right now. And as we strengthen that collaboration and that regional planning, it will make it a lot easier and seamless to move to one policy board post the 2030 census. Topics to consider. So, a lot of topics.
That's just real quickly. I do want to leave just 5 minutes for any thoughts.
Sure.
Again, not multiple thoughts, but just a few thoughts from some of the elected around the room. Just, and I know we have that 10:30.
Yes, sir. Okay, so let me close with the previous slide, if you would, which is the proportional representation scenario. Where is that? It's the next one. Okay, there we go. Okay, so just for the sake of discussion, if we were to create a tri-county policy board at this time and proportioned it based on an equitable geographic population ratio consistent with the state law, we use the 2020 population estimates and apply that to a 25-member board that consists entirely of elected officials. So I'm skipping over a lot of conversations. What do we include transportation agencies or not? Okay, so just local elected officials, maximum board size 25% of the population. So we wind up with 12 seats for Hillsborough County, 9 for Pinellas County, and 4 for Pasco County, and then broken down with the jurisdictions that you see here. So a lot of unanswered questions, obviously, in a board like this. Would we want to create a seat for, rotating representation of local governments if we are removing seats for some of the local governments that currently are able to vote on their MPO? A lot of things to talk about there, but this is just rough cut. Where are we with population and proportionality? And this brings up the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Beth. Appreciate it. Yeah, Commissioner Mariano.
One of the things you could consider is like land mass, geographic size, and I don't see any numbers to that, but I think it's something we need to look at as we go to these numbers. Because the way that's set up right there is we'll look at us at all.
So that's not consistent with state law, but we'd be happy to come back with examples of how the other MPOs around the state are structured in terms of their voting membership, so that you can see for yourself how that's organized.
Yeah, I mean, it's the classic, House of Representatives versus Senate, you gotta have representation by population and representation by. I'm just saying there's different ways of looking at it, and I think to the best point of it, the way it is set up now, we have populations. And my only thought, and just having a thought would be that I'd love to see what other MPOs, even in our own state, that might have taken this step of unifying a larger area than where they are now, and what kind of results that we got, not only in terms of funding opportunities for the region. I would imagine that if we get 100 million individually, that together we get 150, and we're making the numbers up. You'll get more as a region, but also taking a look at these 10 issues that were identified, 10 topics, and maybe just trying to understand how those successfully accomplished new MPOs are doing on any of what they did and how they're doing. Because I think that at least will give us another roadmap as to whether it's something that's attractive for us to pursue. So we may have some of those examples in our own state. We don't have to go to Atlanta or any place else. Just my thought.
I'd like to comment.
Yeah, Commissioner Kemp, go ahead.
Thank you. As anyone who's been on this in the regional transportation boards for a time, know that this discussion's come up before, as Ms. Alden mentioned. The idea of combining MPOs here regionally was rejected specifically, and I think by all the 3 MPOs at the time, not very long ago, but by the Hillsborough MPO board, when this was raised in 2018 and 2019, it was rejected unanimously for a number of reasons. We have a different population. Hillsborough County is younger and more diverse than the state average in Florida. Pinellas and Pasco counties are older and significantly less diverse than the state average. There's more workers in Hillsborough County and more young children in Hillsborough County. Hillsborough, in contrast to Pinellas, is not built out. It's growing rapidly, continues to grow. As many of you recognize, Pinellas County's population growth kind of plateaued in 1995 at about 950,000. Hillsborough County is 1.5 million and it is growing at a blistering pace. I know Pasco is about 600,000 and is growing as well. Hillsborough is not built out, growing rapidly. We have many rural land still, and we have lots of decisions that will impact the residents' air quality, water quality, and way of life. Mergers are unheard of nationwide and in Florida. In the 40 years that MPOs have been established, there has never been a merger anywhere, but there have been divorces. There's been no merger in 40 years, several divorces. Other counties in Florida have not merged MPOs. Dade, Palm Beach, and Broward each have their own MPO, but as well, many small counties at the Panhandle as well have their own MPO. So I just wanted to bring all that forward. It's some of what I learned when we went through this scenario before.
Well, I'm not going to respond to each of your comments, some of which I would agree with, some are not actually true and valid. And I just, what the whole idea here is that, to your comment, no, not all 3 counties unanimously voted to reject it. I know when we had the appointment or the meeting that we were going to have actually was in Hillsborough County, and Pasco and Pinellas representatives had discussion about it. And it would be nice to be open-minded enough to at least have conversation amongst each other, because as you well know, Commissioner Kemp, Tampa Bay Water is a regional model that has worked pretty well. And it deals with 3 of the counties that you talked about. However, whatever the demographics are, it seems to succeed. Doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean we don't have challenges. It doesn't mean that we don't prioritize
South Hillsborough County, one year, or a second year, and then Pasco County, another one. But we take into account the greater good of all of our residents. And I think that model has worked pretty well, and again, not perfect. And a model like this, far from being developed. I mean, we're just talking about initial conversation. Certainly to me, has some, at least some ground to have that discussion. Whether it's economic development issues, whether it's water issues, whether it's transportation issues. If you don't think that it's healthy to have a regional conversation, and as I look at the numbers, it certainly shows that, Hillsborough County would be well represented. But my point was that I really wanted to see how the other merged groups were actually doing, because to your point, Commissioner Kemp, if we find out that they're all struggling mightily and they're not getting more money, then what's the benefit to doing it? So that's the reason I would like to just see more work done in that regard. Are there any commissioners?
Can I just respond for a second? Because I didn't want it to be mischaracterized what I said. I said Hillsborough County Board MPO unanimously voted not to. The other boards, I believe, also came up with votes like that, but I'm not certain about that. Not unanimous votes, but didn't support it. The other is that there have not been any merged MPOs in Florida, just for the record.
There are some other merged MPOs, and we'll talk about that in another time. Are there any other commissioners here who would like to at least give some parting comments to our Orlando and Jacksonville for two, just so you know, Commissioner Kemp?
Well, they didn't vote to merge. They originally started in that way.
And they are a merged area, not so. Yes, there is a merger in those two areas. Commissioner Mariano, do you have any other comments?
Just a comment, and I think, as you mentioned, the 10-day water function that worked very well. I think the balance of how that's set up, I think is something worth looking at. Thanks. The 10-day water program has worked very well. The balance of our equation, I think, is good. A lot of great things have come around. The issue doesn't have between us. It resolved very well. But I think it's important to do that. We're supposed to do that. And as you brought up, as far as Orlando, the merger as well. But I think we can take a closer look at this. Having one voice is critical. That list is very important. That we support it because it gets a look at like we are united in an area. So even if it takes a while if this merger takes place somewhere down the road, whatever, having that voice, having that list is a very important thing.
Yeah, you just go back to State Road 60, I-275 interchange, when we all decided, and it took time to get there, but we all decided that was the #1 project in the region. And as far as I know, it doesn't sit in Pinellas County or Pasco. It was clearly the region came together about what was good for the region. So I think it can work. Are there any other comments from Councilwoman Griffith?
Thank you. I too like to make decisions and have conversations based on facts. And so I would welcome the opportunity for this body to receive additional information about the makeup of each county and how we might distribute representation so that we can address the diversity of how our counties are laid out. So Pasco may be looking at landmass, whereas Pinellas has the density because we don't have the ability to sprawl in a peninsula. This creates different challenges and opportunities for the different counties. And I believe that coming together as a merged MPO could give us the opportunity to work on those things together, even if we do have different challenges. The results, if we find things that work best for the region, are going to benefit everyone, despite those differences. I would love to get some input from Secretary Glenn on this, as I think that this is an important partner and his insight could be very important, and that may wait for another time, but just a heads up, I'll be looking for that input. But I welcome this conversation no matter where it goes, I think it needs to be had, because if we are truly going to move forward as a successful region economically and not get it handed to us by Orlando and Miami areas, we need to keep having this conversation, and we need to start looking at how to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Anybody else, before I let, Secretary Wynn just have a closing comment? We have one other item to take up, so just if you have any closing thoughts.
I think probably at a future meeting to have a bigger, broader conversation would be good. The only things I would add is speaking as a region is a very important thing. When we go looking for money for our region, we don't talk about where the county line is. And I'd say 99% of the people that live in the Tampa Bay region don't care where the county line is. If they cross the county line, they don't even know it for the most part. So thinking regionally is very important. Sometimes it's been difficult to get regional consensus in our region, but when we have gotten it, like on the Western Interchange, we've been successful. I will say Metro Plan, and I was over in Orlando when they formed. You look at I-4 Ultimate, you look at Sunrail, you look at all the investments that have been made there. Jacksonville is starting to get some major investments because they're going to Tallahassee, they're going and getting support speaking as a region. So anything we can do to create more regional consensus and a regional voice to bring regional solutions and where we ought to be heading. I don't know the vehicle that we use to get there, but that should be the goal. Speak as a region, to go and look for, there's so many discretionary grants out there in the federal government. If we can start speaking big, I know Miami is not in a regional MPO, but they're big. And they go and they speak big. We are bigger than Orlando. Tampa Bay region is bigger than metropolitan Orlando, but they speak with one voice. So that's what I believe we should be trying to have.
Yeah, and thank you for that. It's just the idea of speaking at one voice on the one end where we talk about getting access to funds. On the other end, I kind of picture it like an hourglass. On the other end, we have to make sure all of us can continue that connection with our local entities, because obviously as elected officials, we report to them. So we're going to have to make sure that that piece is addressed as well. So as we look at that, I think there seems to be kind of maybe official vote, but consensus to at least continue to look at this, to have further discussions. I certainly would like to see it had discussion sooner rather than later. I don't know if the first meeting in 2022, 23 is enough time, or would you rather do it the second meeting in 2023?
We can certainly bring back information at the first meeting in 2023. In fact, I think it's already on your list of potential agenda.
Think that if I just look a little more carefully, and maybe the secretary, maybe you all can have some additional thoughts on that as well. But do I have a motion to direct staff to continue? I'm just going to call it preliminary investigation. So
Second.
we have a motion and a second to have staff continue looking at the idea of a regional MPO. I don't want is thinking that it's a fait accompli by any stretch. It's just having early conversation where we can actually sit and talk with each other. I think is important. So we have a motion and a second. Any final comment before I call for a vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes, me.
Okay. Motion carries 7-1. And we will go down to the last item on the list, which is the election of officers for 2023. We do have a vacancy in the chairmanship as of this meeting. That's why I'm filling in. I think Commissioner Starkey is the vice chair. Is that right? And I am the two vice chairs. I was the chair, I think, last year, and I think Commissioner Overman has been the chair this year. So there's the logic of the chair for the following year. Anyway, so I think any suggestions or ideas for chair, a motion for chair? Yes, Commissioner Mariana.
I'll move for Commissioner Starkey to be chair. Be like vice chair for Commissioner Ayers, and I'm not sure what those are all together.
I'd like to hear from County Commissioner Philbrook. Anybody interested in sitting as a vice chair of the group?
I'm not actually, I'm here for the next meeting, I'm not on the TMA leadership group. So I can't volunteer my services. In case you were wondering why I wasn't participating in the conversation.
Well, you're on that other region that I'm on, and so I thought you had a man from Texas. Okay, so I have a motion for the chair, for Commissioner Sharkey. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So we have the chair for next year. And then we traditionally have had a vice chair from the other two counties that aren't the chair. And so I'm more, you know, the maker of that motion was for make a motion to declare to Commissioner Henry to be the vice chair for the office. And certainly will, if we don't have a nomination for Hillsborough today, we certainly can for the March meeting. That would be an item that we'll take up. So
And I'm sorry, we haven't held our organizational meeting yet for the coming year, so I don't know yet who our members will be.
that's fair enough. And we'll take that vote at the meeting in March for the second vice chair position. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so council member Citro, are you still with us?
That I am.
Well, I've been just told that I was being very irresponsible and not getting your vote on the regional priority list. We took a vote and I mistakenly said it was 7-1, and I should not have done that. So I needed, if you would like to vote on that, it's currently 6-1. So if you're in favor of the amended priority list with a corresponding letter of support for the Tampa heavy maintenance facility, that's the motion on the table. So if you'd like to vote, just go ahead and vote. If not, it's my apologies again.
Yeah, no need for you to apologize. I'm not in the room. I'm very easily overlooked. I must make a statement before I make a vote.
Thank you.
Because of the last vote in which Hart was excluded, I do not see how this area could work as a region. I'm voting no on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Citro. So that vote was 6-2. Thank you, Rick, for pointing that out. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Oh. Then we are adjourned. Thank you. And Merry Christmas, everybody, and Happy New Year. Yes.
Yeah. I'm Sarah. Hi. Okay. Okay. Sure.
I took people's mics away. It's really. Okay, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. Fine, seamless. Is there?
Well, good morning, everyone. We'll call to order the December 9th, 2022 meeting of the Sun Coast Transportation Planning Alliance. Is Mike good?
Yeah, check 1, 2. Just a reminder, everybody, I took the stands away just to help remind you to hold the microphone very close to your mouth to make sure people at home can hear us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I am Gina Driscoll. I am the chair of the St. Petersburg City Council and a representative on this body from Forward Pinellas. I also was just named the new chair of PSTA for the coming year. This is my first meeting, and lo and behold, I was asked to chair it. Tradition with that goes with the location. So if you'll bear with me if I stumble a bit, I certainly appreciate your patience. We'll go ahead and go to our introductions, followed by public comments. So if we could go ahead and start at this end of the room.
Am I live? Oh, I am. My name is Mary Alwyn, and I'm representing the Hernando Citrus FPO, and Mr. Esposito sent his regards. He could not make this yet for our engagement. So it's exciting to be here, and I used to know it as the CCC back in the day. So. Carlene Reese with the Hernando Citrus FPO.
David Hutchinson, Sarasota Manatee MPO Staff Director.
Vanessa Ball, Commissioners and Chair of the Sarasota Manatee MPO and the Vice Chair of the Manatee Board of County Commissioners.
Commissioner Ruby Davis Slaybaugh, Citrus County Chair, and Hernando Citrus MPO Vice Chair.
Adelita Hillsborough Transit Authority. Thanks.
Morning, Sean Sullivan, Executive Director of Tempe Regional Planning Council. Welcome.
David Wynn, District 7, FDOT Secretary.
Good morning, Beth Alden, Director of the Hillsborough TPO.
Good morning. I'm Harry Cohen. I'm the Hillsborough County Commissioner, and I'm the outgoing term limited chair of the Hillsborough TPO.
Vic Lincoln, Executive Director of Board of Finance.
Good morning, Terry Bradford, Pasco County Commissioner.
Jack Ryan, Chair of the Pasco County Commission. Good morning, Carl. This is staff to the Pasco County MPO.
Good morning, Scott Perry, Pasco County MPO staff.
Good morning, Julia Davis, staff with the Polk Transportation Planning Organization.
Good morning, everyone. Parag Agarwal, Executive Director of Polk TPO. None of the board members from Polk TPO are attending the meeting today, but I will definitely convey the conversation to them.
Dana Santos for Pinellas.
Thank you. And could we have our elected officials who are joining us virtually today introduce themselves?
I'll go first. Seth Waitman, Pasco Commissioner. Good morning again.
Liz Alpert, Vice Mayor, City of Sarasota.
Great, thank you. Do we have any requests for public comment this morning? All right, we have no request for public comment. I'm sorry, I didn't see you raise your hand. Good morning.
Hi, Sharon Calvert, I live in Tiverton in Dallas County, and some of you may have heard on public comment. I just wanted to make sure that, if you're new here, because you're really looking at simplification on even a larger regional, perspective, than just speaking about today, for now, Hillsborough and Pasco. That in Hillsborough County, the Hillsborough TPO submitted a grant to the feds. It appears that no one really knew about it, but it's $1.2 million of your tax dollars to tear down parts of I-275 for a street level boulevard concept. And that was slipped into the work product, your TPO's Unified Program Work Product. I just think that you need to be aware of that, because we have thousands of people moving to this area in mid-Florida, along with our tourists and our seasonal residents. And we cannot be, those interstates, they are vital. They are vital not only to move people and the masses amount of people that use them every single day. I mean, you use 275 to get to USF, to Moffett, to Busch Gardens. I mean, you use it. And of course, our tourists use it as well to get to the beaches. So I just want to make you aware of that, because I think you need, going forward, I hope that that isn't something that this organization will support. And I hope that you will ask to reject that in any of the conversations going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing that there are no additional requests to speak, we'll close public comment.
As that was aimed at Hillsborough TPO, I was wondering if the executive director might respond to that. Okay.
Thank you, and thanks for bringing this up. This is a regionally significant conversation, no question about it. I want to clarify what the Hillsborough TPO actually did was to apply for a grant under the Federal Highway Reconnecting Communities Pilot Program to do a study. The Reconnecting Communities Pilot Program is designed to look at how to, it says, reconnect communities that have been impacted by the construction of major facilities like I-275. There are a lot of different strategies. In fact, there are some great publications available on the Federal Highway website of how better connections have been made across interstate highway facilities to reconnect impacted neighborhoods. It did not involve tearing down the highway. So the purpose of this study is to do visioning with the community members. We have heard from a small group of our community members. They would like us to look at the removal of I-275. I don't know that that is a widely held perspective. So one of the parts of a visioning study is to do broad public engagement and get more input onto this question that will, of course, include all of you, assuming that there is even a grant award for this study.
And I just want to reiterate, I don't think there is any support for tearing down.
All right, thank you. We'll close public comment, and before we move to our next agenda item, I wanted to invite Sean Sullivan to have the floor for a moment as he shares with us a video from the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As many of you know, since early October 2018, that is, the Regional Planning Council has been working to form the Tampa Bay Regional Resiliency Coalition. And we released, the council voted at the November 14th meeting to adopt the Regional Resiliency Action Plan. There have been 32 governments throughout the Tampa Bay region that initially had signed on to the MOU. And we've got those same 32 governments have expressed an interest in really participating in, and many of you and your staffs have helped us, which we're appreciative, to help develop this Regional Resiliency Action Plan. Over the course of the next 7 months, we hope to visit each of the 32 governments who are part of the coalition to ask your body, your elected body, to vote to adopt the Regional Resiliency Action Plan, which is clearly optional. We understand priorities in one county might be different from another, in the city likewise, and that's okay. Really, it's a voluntary commitment, but it's been really, even during the pandemic, we kept our outreach ongoing. So, Madam Chair, we'd like to give you a sneak peek video that we released, we're about to release on Monday, and there may be some people in that video that look familiar to us, for all of us in that. That's if we could show the video, Sarah.
The Tampa Bay region is sought after by families, businesses, and global organizations as one of the most fruitful places to live, work, and enjoy the very best that life has to offer. It accounts for nearly 20% of Florida's gross domestic product and is the 17th largest economy in the U.S. And its 4 million plus residents make up almost a quarter of the state's population. But uncontrollable forces of change do not play favorites. Beyond protecting our environment, jobs, tourism, and property, laying an unshakable groundwork for our best possible future is key to staying the course. We understand that in order to rebound from disaster, we must enable even our most vulnerable community members to overcome the expected and unexpected challenges we'll face in the future. The Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council was formed to bring key governments together to harness our collective strength. Through collaboration, we redefine preparation from something done to avoid the worst to something done in anticipation of the best. Our shared focus energized the formation of the Tampa Bay Regional Resiliency Coalition in 2018. These changemakers set forth to create the 18th such program in the nation, the Tampa Bay Regional Resiliency Coalition. The coalition has grown to include 32 member governments in 7 counties who ensure our region isn't just protected, but nurtured to thrive. The first of its kind in the Tampa Bay region, this resiliency plan is an actionable, scalable framework with ways to implement resiliency measures for each community's unique values and contributions to our region. Key to the plan's success was the holistic collaboration used to develop the plan across partner governments, leaders, and experts. This resiliency plan offers new ways to work together, as well as a menu of best practices that can be implemented with measurable outcomes. Additionally, the plan outlines high-level goals, objectives, and actionable instructions for local implementation and regional collaboration. And with 11 priority actions, we have the potential to be our most resilient.
We live in a beautiful part of not only the country, but in the world. But living here takes great responsibility. We need to take care of our region. Protecting folks against flooding is critical. The priorities that we have structured in the resiliency plan are going to be beneficial for new growth that's going to be coming in. It's going to help the infrastructure we have in place so that when a storm event does come in, we can actually recover from it quicker.
The reason I think those 11 priorities can make a huge difference throughout our county is because it provides a very specific roadmap. And in order to get where you want to be, it's important that you have directions of how to get there.
This is an all hands on deck issue, and it's not going to just be the local governments that do this work. We're going to need the collaboration of our business community and our nonprofit partners to make sure that when we're looking at how we grow, that we're doing it collaboratively. And if we are not thinking bigger about how we build, how we rebuild, and how we develop going forward in the face of climate change, we become an unviable community for hundreds of thousands of people. We know that we can't stop storms from coming, but we know that we can have better policies in place to help people evacuate, but also have better building code in place so that there is somewhere for them to come back to after the storm.
Making sure that we start having a dialogue between all these diverse communities means that we're going to come up with all kinds of strategies that different other communities can use to fit their particular needs. We will see a tremendous impact on our quality of life. We will see it in our environment, we will see it in our air quality, we will see it in flood relief. The list really goes on and on. By focusing on things that acknowledge climate change, we are actually going to save money in the long term. It is money spent now that will reap a lot of benefit later.
Our main problem is congestion. We really have to work together to come up with solutions because we have major issues. All elected officials in the state of Florida has a responsibility to make sure that safety is their #1 issue. If we do our jobs right, in 10, 15, or 20 years, the majority of our citizens will be prepared for whatever is thrown at us. We'll do a better job at building so that we can start repairing and getting back on our feet faster.
This change is going to happen. We have to focus on our resilience as a community from a lot of aspects, from housing affordability to resilience to events like hurricanes or rising sea level, to traffic and transportation and changing models of transportation that are coming, whether we're ready for it or not. So we need to prepare for that to strengthen our community as a whole.
The time for action is now. We can't really wait any longer. We've got elected leadership throughout this region that is ready to go, and I could not be more thrilled at the prospect of what we're going to accomplish in the future.
A resilient future for communities large and small requires action. The plan is extensive and comprehensive, but starting the journey to greater resiliency for our Tampa Bay region is simple. First, read the plan. You'll learn the actionable ways to ensure future viability for our community. Then, get involved with the Tampa Bay Regional Resiliency Coalition. Through continued collaboration, we will prepare our region to thrive. Together, we create the Tampa Bay region's best future for generations to come.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We hope that this video is an inspiration to help us become more resilient, work collaboratively, take a while work together, and we thank you for the opportunity to share that story.
Thank you. That was excellent. Thank you for taking time to share that with us. Our next item on the agenda is to review and approve the major regional transportation priority projects. And presenting is Chelsea Favre from Forward Canals.
Yes, thank you. So just as some of you saw earlier, we're going to go through our regional priorities. This is an exercise that we do each year, and what we really want to make sure that this priority list is a reflection of the major projects throughout our region. The projects really need to build on the regional long-range transportation plan that we put together This committee is advisory to all of the MPOs, and the MPOs do develop their own priority lists. But this is really our chance to highlight the projects that could really benefit from our collective advocacy. Again, this is done annually. This slide shows a picture of the regional long-range transportation plan that this group put together just about 2 years ago. And then there's a list of projects that have been funded because of the collective support of this group. The Gateway Expressway, the West Shore Interchange, the Central Pole Parkway, and even Suncoast 2 up in Pasco. So we've really had a lot of success by coming together as a region and saying, these are the big projects that we support. So in your packet today is a list of the unfunded priorities. There are also recently funded priorities on that list, but what we're really going to focus on today are those unfunded ones. There are a few projects that were moved around to reflect changes in the funding status through the FDOT work program. But this list right here is really just those large ones that still need our collective support to be able to get them across the finish line. First, we have the I-75 interchange at Gibsonton in Hillsborough County, the I-275 express lanes from 375 up to Gandy Boulevard and Pinellas, regional rapid transit in the I-275 corridor, the intersection of 54 and 41 in Pasco, the State Road 60 interchange. There is some funding for this project, but there is still one phase that is unfunded. This is the big West Shore interchange. So that phase will remain on this list until that portion is also funded. US 41 from 44 up to State Road 200. Down in Sarasota Manatee, there's the DeSoto Bridge replacement and the Bradenton Palmetto Connector. Over in Polk, we have the I-4 and the State Road 33 interchange. That's exit 38. This is a new priority for this year. We also have the Downtown Lakeland Intermodal Transit Center. That's also a new project. And then regional passenger rail transit connection between Tampa and Orlando. This is another new one, and this is really just to show our support for eventually getting Brightline or a Brightline-like service to connect over into Tampa. So the TMA leadership group reviewed the priorities for the 3-county urban core this morning and took action to advance them, and they're included on this list. So what we're seeking your action on today is to approve this list, and then we can transmit it to all the MPOs and FDOT for funding consideration with the next work program. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions?
I'm comfortable with everything we've done in the past. Speaking as a board, I think it's been very effective. Earlier at TMA, we had a motion that was passed to eliminate the maintenance of parts, heavy maintenance facilities, but give it letters of support. Matter of fact, if Sean Sullivan was sitting around there, I would say, Sean, I would like you to get a regional planning council letter of support as well. They're not to do one for Pasco County. So I just don't think that's appropriate.
Thank you. Anyone else? Do we have anyone who is attending virtually who would like to speak?
No one currently has their hands raised to make a comment.
All right, so we just need a motion.
Hey, Jane, this is Seth and Pasco. Could someone restate the motion, please? It's difficult to hear.
Thank you. So we don't have a motion yet, but I think we're about to get one. So stand by.
I will make a motion to approve the list of priorities with the exception of the replacement of parts, heavy maintenance facilities, but give a letter of support for the parts, heavy maintenance facilities.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the list with the exception of the replacement of parts, heavy maintenance facilities, opting instead for a letter of support for that item. Commissioner Cohen.
I know this was a discussion at the meeting prior to this. I think that the Hillsborough representatives need their pace, and that was decided there. In the interest of unity, I'm going to vote in favor of this list today. But I just want to acknowledge the discussion that was had earlier and hope that anyone that is in a position to write a letter of support for that facility will do so.
All right. Thank you. I do have a question. Again, I'm new to the group, so I'm still learning. Looking at this list, it does include the Downtown Lakeland Intermodal Transit Center.
Can someone provide some information about that? That's another instance where we have a facility rather than, road work or something like that. So, yes, thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. For the record, Julia Davis, Senior Transportation Planner, Polk TPO. My specialty is transit. This is a facility that was percolated through area studies through the Florida DOT District 1 and City of Lakeland with support from the transit system. The existing transit facility, the transfer facility is constrained by geography. It cannot expand. And it's in the wrong location to support intermodal facilities, including Park and Ride and BRT and the eventual expansion of Sunrail through Lakeland. Simultaneously, the administrative and maintenance facility is also space constrained. So this is an effort to bring the administrative people and the maintenance people and the scheduling and dispatch, the whole works, into one location in downtown Lakeland to make it more usable and connected for all the modes that we want to achieve. We have the PB&E study is funded, and we're seeking construction funds for this project. So we are going outside the traditional highway funding priority list and moving transit into the century.
Thank you. So when we're talking about the HART facility, in the last meeting, I brought up the fact that we celebrated that we had secured the funding and the space for a new Clearwater multimodal transit center. That was actually done without support from this group, but through a partnership with the county, with the city of Clearwater, and through grant funding, including a RAISE grant that helped to make that happen. Can you tell me, because of the last meeting when we discussed, facilities, and this is something that is different from the other projects that are here, aside from HART. I'm looking for that path to yes on that one. So can you tell me about the funding requests and grants that have been applied for and what the efforts have been on y'all's part to make this happen?
Commissioner Parag from Polk TPO. I will say that this is a major priority for Polk County, City of Lakeland, and Petro District 1. We are seeking additional federal funding and state funding for this project. As Julie just mentioned, the PB&E study was already funded and it has been completed. So once we are basically seeking out construction money, there's a lot of federal money also available for projects like these, like a transit project sort of a thing. So definitely we are seeking outside funding, but support from this group will definitely.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair, to help a little, when we looked at the BRT, one of the things was a park and ride facility to accommodate those going up and down. If we ever did the CSX line, I'd be saying those facilities that would be to be in transit type now would be very applicable to this as well. So I am comfortable with that on the list, but it was a great question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for helping me understand. So I believe we have a motion in a second to approve the priority list. Seeing that there's no further requests for discussion, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Vanessa Ball,
Yes.
Commissioner Slava,
Yes.
Commissioner Harry Cohen,
Yes.
Commissioner Mariano,
Yes.
and Councilmember Gina Driscoll.
Yes.
I do not believe we have extras online.
So we have no voting members on. We need to cast a vote.
I don't believe so, though, is Councilmember Alford? I see her vote. Okay, she's an alternate, okay, so no, there are no other voting members online.
All right, thank you. The motion passes.
Our next item is Gulf Coast Safe Street Summit Report, and for that, we have from the TPO, Craig Agrawal, and I'm very sorry if I mispronounced your name.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Parag Agrawal, Executive Director on TPO. So as part of this conversation, I have around 4 slides and a small video of around 8 minutes. So last month on November 3rd, TPO hosted the 5th Gulf Coast Safe Street Summit at RT Funding Center in Lakeland. This was a very collaborative effort of the 6 NPOs of the Tampa Bay area, FDOT, Service Connections, Polk County Public Schools, all the cities of Polk County. We all worked together to host this event. So I do know that many of the board members present today and many of the staff members here, they did attend this safety summit at Lakeland last month. But I do want to provide you a brief overview of the safety conference that took place last month. Moving on, Sarah. So, although we all know that Tampa Bay area and the Central Florida region is one of the best places to live, not only in the nation, but also in the world. The residents enjoy a high quality of life, and we are all very proud of our communities. But if you look at the data from the last 10 years, Florida is also the most dangerous state for pedestrians. On an average, there are around 8 fatalities and 49 serious injuries on Florida roadways each day. If you look at the metropolitan areas all across the country, as per the study done by Smart Growth of America, Orlando Sanford was ranked as the most dangerous metro area in the country for being a pedestrian. Tampa Bay Clearwater was ranked number 8, and Lakeland Winter Haven was ranked number 9. As per the study conducted by University of Wisconsin recently this year, US 19 was ranked as one of the most deadliest roads in America. Moving on. So when we were planning for this conference, one-day safety conference, we thought it should not only be speakers. The focus of last month's conference was on experiencing safety, how we can promote the culture of safety in our communities, so that the participants will experience firsthand how different concepts, laws, and ideas impact the safety of those around us in the designs of our transportation infrastructure. Like we all go to many of these conferences in which we have speakers after speakers, and what all we do, we basically look at our phones. So I will show you the videos, I will show you the pictures, not even one attendee is looking at their phones. So again, we were trying to encourage the culture of safety in our communities. Moving on. The number of registrations were much more than what we expected. There were more than 170 people who registered for the conference. The whole one-day event was basically divided into 2 parts. In the morning, it was a safety fair that basically had 12 safety activities and 6 mobile tours. And in the afternoon session, we had 2 keynote speakers, and we also handed out the Regional Safety Awards from each NPO. Moving on. So there were 2 keynote speakers. The first keynote speaker was Melissa McDowell. She is the president of National Coalition for Safer Roads. I'm sure you must have heard her before. She's a very emotional, powerful speaker. And some of the feedback which we got from the attendees was like, it was a best presentation they had heard so far. And since it was in Polk County, you have to include our Sheriff Brady Judd. So he was also a very powerful speaker. Moving on. So again, as I initially mentioned, the Regional Safety Awards were handed out. Each NPO received 2 awards, a Bob the Builder Award and the Vision Zero Hero Award. There was also a panel discussion on safety on a budget. So again, Polk County, Central Florida, Tampa Bay has many smaller communities. And we always say we do not have millions of dollars to promote safety. So what are some of the high impact, low cost techniques that can be implemented to promote safety in our communities. And then at the end, there was a pledge to slow down. So all the 150 people who attended, we basically took the pledge to slow down, trying to engage the participants as much as possible. After this, I have a small video that was completed only yesterday afternoon. I'm hoping it will work. I know it will work.
Okay.
There you go. The technology is always the hardest part. Once you get through this, then everything becomes.
The 5th Annual Gulf Coast Safe Street Summit focused on experiencing safety in a hands-on, impactful way. The summit consisted of both hands-on safety experiences and mobile tours, along with keynote presentations and a panel discussion on how to implement affordable safety solutions in the community.
We're here with the Florida Department of Transportation. We're here as part of Mobility Week, so that is a statewide initiative. We go across all of our 12 counties and we like to promote safety and mobility options. That's anything other than a single occupancy car. Biking, walking, any of our transit options, anything like that.
We're always to be, we can learn something. I have a lot of vendors here that have different ideas and stuff that we have to take in and look at. So it all works out, for everybody.
We're always one of the highest ranked in serious injury, pedestrian serious injury and fatalities. And I think events like this highlight the importance of safety. Slow down and be careful because pedestrians are out there. This county's growing and we just need to be careful.
This is the Highway Patrol Rollover Simulator. We've had this particular model in use for 15 years here in the Tampa Bay area, and we take it to all kind of businesses, schools, outings like today's event here in Lakeland, hoping to get people to buckle up. We average about 85 to 90% seatbelt usage across the state, but we're trying to get that number up to 100%. No matter how short or long the trip is, put those seatbelts on, make sure everyone else inside the vehicle is also belted as well, because one person not wearing their belt can have a dramatic impact and injure other people inside the car if they're not buckled up.
These are the Fatal Vision goggles. So these show people what it would be like trying to walk down the line with a elevated blood alcohol content level. So it shows people that it's not so easy like they would think to, oh, I can have a drink or two and then I can go, get behind the wheel of the car and I'm fine. You can't go have a drink and then get behind the wheel of the car.
We have issues with, at times, bus stop locations that have been put in perhaps well before a certain time, and those in wheelchairs may have a difficulty accessing the bus. Even though the bus gets as close as it can, the wheelchair ramp, whether it's a flip down ramp or a drop down ramp, may have a problem and they may not be able to access that ramp without going on grass or turf. Allowing people to understand the need for ADA and continued transportation advantages for those who may be bound in a wheelchair.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you all to the 5th Gulf Coast Safe Street Summit in Lakeland. I'm Parag Agarwal, and I'm the Executive Director of the Polk Transportation Planning Organization, or the Polk TPO. The safety of all road users is very important for Florida communities.
Early this year, we worked a traffic fatality on I-4 I've got to tell you about, where a 22-year-old was driving. He had an 18-year-old passenger and a 16-year-old passenger. The other driver stated they saw the vehicle speeding and weaving in and out of traffic. The driver lost control, left the roadway, flipped the vehicle, ejected both the driver and one of the passengers. Killed them both. Neither were wearing seat belts. But the 16-year-old, who was in the back seat, buckled up, was treated and released from the hospital. All 3 of them could have been treated and released from the hospital. Our traffic homicide investigation showed that not only those 2 kids died, and they shouldn't have, but they were driving 93 miles an hour at the time of the crash.
Jay is a true public servant and champion for vulnerable street users in Polk County. Jay and the staff of the county's roads and drainage department have implemented several complete street projects, safety and trail projects in Polk County. Because of his leadership, the road and drainage department has gone above and beyond in their commitment to improving driving, bicycling, and walking safety. Through his work, he has made the Polk community safer.
My motivational why is my husband's death and my brother's diminished quality of life as a crash survivor. Charles Stanley said, "What we learned in the darkness, we are to share in the light." There's no way that I can summarize in just a few short moments how my entire life changed on the evening of October 24th, 2003, the night my husband Mark was killed. Yet I want to share the intimate details of the crash, how one crash can alter a lifetime.
I will say that this is a more technical part of this one-day conference. You had a great morning. You had some very powerful speakers, very powerful emotional speakers. And we now here today with a panel of 3 members who will be talking about solutions. The focus of today's panel is on safety on a budget.
And then lastly, as part of this effort, we did look proactively, not just on where crashes are occurring, but we did look at the risks along the network. This is for the crash type of lane departure. You can do this for any type of crash, but again, where are the future challenges on the system, not just the ones here and now, where crashes are occurring, and it really helped, again, local agencies pinpoint where to focus their efforts on future projects and programs. So with that, again, I think this is really relevant quote, and I'll kind of end where I started, is we can't keep doing what we're doing because it's not making a difference. And so I do think if you have the opportunity to kind of take that step back, especially before all this Safe Streets for All funding comes, and think about how your programs are working and some of those hard decisions that you can make moving forward, I think it'll make for more reductions, hopefully, fingers crossed, over the next several years. So.
There's a lot more than we might realize we can do with little to no budget on a local level. Some simple examples here, no budget, speed management through signal timing, which is a very interesting project that District 1 is piloting in a suburban section down in Bradenton.
When we talk about tactical urbanism, we're really talking about breaking down the project delivery mill. Instead of jumping right into your long-term capital project for some of the bigger investments in bicycle pedestrian infrastructure in particular, we like to say break down those projects into smaller increments to try to build political will, build political capital, spend less money, and still get something in the ground as you approach your long-term projects. And that allows you to test what works and doesn't work. It also allows you to get something in the ground while you're waiting for the 10-year cycle to come up with something more elegant and permanent.
I think actually that part of the problem is the way that we design our cities. And, you know, it's gonna be hard for a place like, you know, Central Florida and Orlando in particular, where we design suburb after suburb, people have to drive. I'm from the new urbanist that's my lineage, my philosophical and academic lineage. And so I think that the first piece of transportation infrastructure is actually the building and the type of building that meets the street. After that, how we design the street is a totally other, it's another question. But if you start from the premise that all buildings are suburban and they're all separated and all the houses are connected via highways, which is what happens in Orlando. Right now, I'm gonna go back to my hotel in Orlando. I'm gonna go from one highway to another, to a parkway. I'm not really gonna engage with a whole lot of local streets the way that we would find in a city. That, to me, that's part of the biggest challenge, I think, with safety in our region and in the United States.
Wouldn't it be better to be a little late than not get there at all? Please take the pledge to slow down.
Sign the pledge at pledgetoslowdown.com.
I take the pledge to slow down. Thank you all so much.
So with this, I just want to thank all the staff members for helping us and supporting us in this conference. I think the next year's conference will be co-hosted by Pasco County and Hernando Citrus County. Again, thanks for everything.
All right, thank you for that. Our next item is the school zone speed management legislation support by Atlanta and Barton Counties.
Well, as a good segue to that last item, I wanted to bring your attention to this issue, which has come up in our legislative report before, and we're asking for the SCTPA support in having staff send a letter to our legislative delegation requesting that they either co-sponsor or sponsor this legislation again. What happened last year, and this has been a bill, I think, for several years, is it enables cities and counties to use speed detection devices in school zones to enforce the 20 mile an hour or whatever the speed limit is within school zones. I know it varies in some counties. To use technology to enforce their speed limits. And in your packet, there is a one-page summary of the benefits of this legislation and why this legislation is needed. It passed the Senate last year. It got to the floor and it did not have a floor vote because there was no companion bill that made it out of committee in the House. So the Senate seems to be supportive. The House of Representatives has not been thus far. So that would be where the advocacy would be targeted. And again, the letter would be just to highlight some of the educational aspects of this and not to advocate for the bill, but to identify the reasons why speed management could help further the ability of law enforcement and others to ensure safety on our roadways. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer that.
So it's kind of like a red light camera.
Essentially, it uses cameras, yes, within the school zones.
Not just.
Yes. You had me. I was totally in until you said that, and I'll tell you why. You know, Manatee County, we just removed all of our red light cameras. It's just not a fair way to go. Perhaps I need more information on this. Maybe there's another way we can look at it or something, but we do have a problem in Manatee with speeders in school zones. So I think something does need to be done. But when you said, when Jack said, is it like red light cameras, I choked. So I'm not going to say no for Manatee. I'd love nothing more than to help in this endeavor, but I'm going to need more information on this. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'll be an enthusiastic yes vote on it. I think that this issue is just constant. The speeding complaints that we hear in neighborhoods around schools, and from what I've been able to observe, we just are not able to enforce in a way that keeps people from breaking the law, effectively breaking the law. So I think that this is excellent, and I have no discomfort with it at all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I would just like to point out that this is not a gotcha bill as part of the language in here. It requires 30 days spent educating the public, and warnings would have to be issued before tickets would be issued. And law enforcement has been way down over the last 2 or 3 years for speeding and other violations on our roadways. I think we stretch our law enforcement way too far in asking them to enforce everything else on our roadways, and technology plays a role in that. And this would be a pilot program, and it would allow cities and counties to opt in. So if Pasco County or another county did not want to do this, they certainly would not be required to do it.
Any other questions? Right, so I'll entertain a motion to consider authorizing letters of support. All right, we have a motion and a second to authorize a letter of support for this item for the 2023 legislative session. Seeing that there is no further request for discussion, do we have a roll call vote, please?
I think Chelsea left the room. How about if we just go around the table?
And we have someone who's recording the votes.
I got it.
You ready? Okay. All right, go ahead. And I'm sorry, I don't know who all the voting members are with all the names, so if y'all can help me out and state your name and your vote.
We're staff, so we would go wrong on it. First vote.
I'm sorry.
They're looking for the votes, or the votes on the.
Okay. Yes, it's my turn.
Yeah.
Commissioner Ball, Manatee County, no.
Commissioner Slayball, yes.
Commissioner Cullen, yes. Commissioner Mariano, no.
And mine. And I'm a yes vote.
So we have 3 yeses and 2 nos.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item is the endorsement of a TMA letter regarding state-supported Amtrak service. Presenting is Elizabeth Watkins at Hillsborough.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Elizabeth Watkins, Hillsborough TPO. In the interest of time, I'm going to shorten this presentation to specifically focus on state-supported Amtrak service for your consideration of sending a letter. At the TMA's September meeting, they sent a letter to FDOT requesting that they consider supporting state-supported Amtrak service. So I will get into that. Not sure which one. It's not this one. It'll be another. Okay. No, it's none of those. So
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Madam Chair, it's right. So this morning, the TMA passed, in general support for regional passenger rail as a connection between technical window. And that was written, how we're going to be protected. Why are we changing the language of this or putting a different motion when the TMA was submitted?
I can try to answer maybe that. The team has already taken action on this letter. So we're asking the SCTPA to take its step action.
And that action is actually to request that the Florida Department of Transportation become a partner in the Amtrak partner program like many other states across the country.
So we just so much of it to back to the student part, where we just passed another one with no general reasons, just to get right on our answer, either way, I'm good with the conversation and discussion, but I don't understand why we would just have a motion passed on this list with specific verbiage, what you mentioned, which is more general for private and order, that, and now it looks like now you're using a letter from before that's just saying after that. I don't know why we would be convoluting the matter or changing again from one to the other, which is what.
This letter will be talking about right against. It doesn't predispose the Tampa to Orlando corridor to one operator or another. Amtrak has a much broader vision for service across the state of Florida. And becoming a partner with Florida DOT would open up a lot of those doors.
Recording in progress.
Has South Carolina and Georgia done the same?
So I think Elizabeth is able to answer that. I think North Carolina is a partner. North Carolina, Texas, as you can see on this map, there are 20 states, so over half the country participate in this state-supported Amtrak survey.
My question was South Carolina and Georgia. I can see North Carolina up there. If you don't have a connection with South Carolina and Georgia, it's not.
So there are three types of services that Amtrak provides, which I think Elizabeth would be prepared to talk about. There is a federal level of funding that makes those key strategic connections all across the country. Then in some of the states, there's additional funding provided by the state to provide like connecting and complementary services so that it complements. There is Amtrak service that makes that connection all the way to Florida. And so the question is, do we want to build on that investment that's already there? We've also had a number of conversations with Amtrak and actually with Brightline as well about the Tampa to Orlando corridor. The representatives of both groups are saying to us that they could coexist in the Tampa to Orlando corridor because Brightline perceives that they are serving an express market, a nonstop market between Tampa and Orlando, whereas Amtrak would probably provide stops on the way, might operate more often, so more like a local service.
That's a great question. And this slide in particular illustrates on the left Amtrak service today. So there are only 3 routes in the state of Florida, and there's only 3 one-way trips per day. The image on your right shows what Amtrak wants to do in the future. And really what it's about is increasing that frequency. So one thing that they would love to do is to have multiple round trips per day, 2 between Jacksonville and Tampa, 4 round trip between Tampa and Orlando, and 3 between Tampa and Miami. As Beth mentioned, when we spoke with Amtrak, they're really focused on that Orlando to Tampa, Miami triangle to increase the service. So the presentation before you today, or the action for you today, is to consider sending a letter of support for state-supported Amtrak service. And as Beth mentioned, there's 3 parts of Amtrak's business model. The first of which is that traditional intercity long-distance train. The second is state-supported Amtrak service, and the third is commuter rail. So for example, in Baltimore, Amtrak operates the MARC service. As I mentioned earlier, there are 20 states across the country who participate in state-supported Amtrak service. And what that means is that the state DOT partners with Amtrak, whether it's with funding or operating or other resources to increase that frequency, maybe new routes. One thing that's really beautiful about state-supported Amtrak service is that it looks different in every of the 20 states. So it's very scalable, very based on the needs of that particular state. So one example is our partners to the north in North Carolina. They participated in state-supported Amtrak service since the 1980s. There are 2 routes that benefit from this support. They have, I think, 5 round trips per day. It feeds in with all the local transit networks along their stops. And it's something that North Carolina DOT really prides themselves on. In their agreement, actually North Carolina performs marketing and operations. It actually owns some of the rail cars. And as I mentioned earlier, it connects with the transit system. Just using this example to illustrate that the partnership is used on based on each state. So I'll skip over
I
this.
can't display it to my phone.
So the request for your consideration today is to, like I mentioned, to endorse the letter that the TMA sent to FDOT to consider to do a financial assessment of the state's participation in Amtrak service. So there's a letter for that, as well as a possible second action of referring that letter for each of the member MPOs who are part of the alliance to send a similar letter voicing the support for state-supported Amtrak service. The state DOT is currently working on its state system rail plan, so it's good timing for these conversations. And that's the information. I'd be happy to take any questions.
And we heard that that the state Department of Transportation has heard from other NPOs and other parts of the state on this request as well.
Questions? Mariani.
Thank you. Mariano.
Mariano, sorry.
You know, it's great to see you want to work with Amtrak. But I'm wondering, and I'm supportive to do the Tampa Orlando connection as well, but I'm wondering, we've got a CSX line. Can we add something in this letter saying we would like to see them even entertain trying to work with CSX? That's one of their options.
I think that if there is a partnership program between the Florida DOT and Amtrak, that options like that would be on the table. I think this has to be a first step before we get there, to be honest.
We had a first step about 10 years ago, 7 years ago, when CSX and Bolinelli gave a presentation to the TMA saying, showing us the line running from down center of Tampa all the way up through Brooksville, and then the other line running from near Mosey all the way down through Oldsmar, all the way down to St. Pete. It's a line that they don't use very much. So we're going to try to make the most efficient part of Amtrak and assets that are already in the ground, probably less expensive. And whereas CSX, I don't know if we're in discussions anymore, it may open that up. And I wouldn't mind that conversation being opened up with a letter like this to go in there. Even if it doesn't do anything more than just draw a little bit of attention that we want that explored, I think it's a benefit to us.
Real briefly on CSX, and I don't remember I don't know if you were at the T-Barter meeting where it came in recently and talked with CSX.
No.
They came in and did lay out some basic tenets of what they would expect to have to further discussions, and I think there's discussions going on in the region now about what we do. But they came in, they said their business model has changed a lot. They're not necessarily interested in selling their lines because they see a bigger freight model in their business. They talk about risk allocation, which is a big issue. So they laid out what we're going to have to do. And I guess now we're going to have to investigate whether that's something we can or want to do. So it's all part of a bigger look at statewide passenger rail and how. So I think, and maybe you can talk about it if I need to add anything, but we're developing the statewide plan right now. So all this will feed into the statewide plan.
And if I could add just one more point of information to that, that's well said. CSX has changed.
I would think it's pretty handy to make lane shifts to the right. That camera goes on. Yeah.
There has also been a recent case with the Surface Transportation Board between Amtrak and CSX regarding service and does Amtrak have the ability to put passenger service onto freight rail corridors? This has been, a matter of discussion at the national level for many decades. And it looks like, and Elizabeth's looked more into this than I have, but that they have come to a compromise position and Amtrak will be able to provide service on that freight rail corridor. So again, working with Amtrak may give us one more tool in the toolbox for how do we work with CSX.
Madam Chair. As far as CSX goes, I can tell you that I just had a meeting with them probably 2 months ago, and everyone is correct. I mean, they are changing their business plan. And part of the reason for that is Port Manatee, which is in obviously Manatee County. And the county commission sets as the Port Authority report. And they are increasing their freight lines and so forth. So personally, I'm not as involved, obviously, being from Manatee as a lot of you are with your closer to Tampa. But I don't necessarily have a problem in the state and DOT looking at, they can improve Amtrak services for our citizens. I'm okay with that. See where it ends up, but CSX, I don't know that we can really count on anything more with them because of in their business plan. So thank you for hearing me out. Thank you. Yes.
Hello, Carl, yes, with Pasco County and Deal. I also attended the T-Bar meeting, and the CSX representative, Mr. Craig Musso, made a couple of very important points. He said, we can go forward with freight or with passenger rail on CSX facilities, that we'd have to have a plan for safety. We'd have to ensure that they had capacity for their operations for freight. We'd have to ensure that funding was available, and we'd have to indemnify CSX. They also added that if we want to go forward, they want to have a single point of contact for moving forward with passenger rail. And they suggested Florida DOT, and I wanted the spot to know that because they have an established relationship with Florida DOT. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
So I haven't heard anything that would lead me to get off the point about bringing CSX into the letter at some point. Even if it's just a suggestion of all possible partners that are out there, including FDOT and CSX, just to open that door for the conversation. Now, as we're looking at a state plan, it may be the ultimate partner. And frankly, I've heard a lot of people that use, let's say, Amtrak to drive their car from Sanford, they drive all the way up there, take it all the way up to Virginia, and they're gonna start driving again. So maybe they'll improve that somewhere down the road. But I think there's a potential for us to even get that part of the line down there. I think CSX, a lot of their nationwide routes do not include the line that I just mentioned. I think once in 30 years or 25 years, I've been stopped by a rail line running up and down on the CSX further going north south. This potential that's there, they said it was there before, at least on that section. And I think part of the reason we improved our investment in the bridge going across the bay was so that rail line could be accommodated as well. I don't think there's any hurry. We can find some way to put some language in to add CSX in there to be part of the conversation with FDOT or however you want to structure, but some little note could go a long way in making that conversation happen. Someone federally might say, well, what do they mean? What could CSX do? Something like that could trigger something that could make, I think, what's the biggest infrastructure waste we have in this area. There may be something that happen, because it certainly hasn't happened yet.
Madam Chair, just to move this forward, I would go ahead and agree with my counterpart. I don't see anything wrong with it, one way or the other, to just add something in about CSX. I mean, worth a shot. Who knows what might come from it? So at least it would move this forward at this point.
And I get a suggestion. So in the second paragraph, we have FDOT's participation in state-supported Amtrak service would improve existing passenger rail service and serve as a catalyst for future expansion of the passenger rail network. What if we add there, comma, such as working with existing freight rail operators?
All right, so we have
so moved.
second. We have to approve the letter with the change. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Next is the work program overview for districts 1 and 7. So it's everyone. Who would like to go first?
Well, we have it in the slide.
Let's see it.
Alright, who wants to go first? Is it major? Okay. Probably. Okay.
First.
From your
No, it's, yeah, I mean, citrus is out. Yes, and, again, I'm Mary Elvin, I'm the MPO coordinator for the Kansas Citrus MPO. Sitting in for Bob Escondido, who could not be here today, and he sends his apologies and tidings for the season. I'll try to move quickly, as I know that all the other MPOs will be following behind us. So our first slide of this is our 24 through 28 work program highlights. And I just kind of want to also say that Hernando Citrus is very appreciative of its funding partnerships with the state and the better programs and the regional entities that we are associated with. So we're very appreciative of those relationships. Our first slide deals with the #1 project for congestion management. It's a priority project and it's located in Citrus County. And it's a big project, and what they did was divide it up into more manageable sections, you know, that will allow the funding to be more smooth. They did preliminary engineering funding that they added from East Arlington to Louisiana Lane in 25 and right away in 27, and a portion from south of the Withlacoochee State Trail to north of Sportsman Point. They deferred the construction for a year. Number 12, major project congestion management priority project in Hernando County is US 301 from Pasco County line to State Road 50 Cortez Boulevard. It's an area that's growing in nature. Growth is coming. They're going to add 2 lanes to existing 2 lanes, and then the construction funding is being added in fiscal 25. Resurfacing and improvement projects, there are a number of those. Again, this is a highlight of the program. The funding work program does include additional projects, but these are highlights of that program. Citrus had from 470 to north of Popka. They've added some funding from SCTPA funding and US 41 from south of State Road 44 to north of State Road 44. They've added some preliminary engineering and then construction in 28. US 19 from northwest 7th Avenue to south of Withlacoochee River Bridge. They've added preliminary engineering in 24 and then construction in 26. And Hernando, the improvements are for Culver Road from Powell Road south to Pasco, Hernando Pasco line, and then construction was added to fiscal 25. US 41 from County Line Road to south of Powell Road is in the program for engineering in 24 and then construction in 26. And then intersection improvements at Anderson Snow Road and Corporate Boulevard, areas that are experiencing growth and needed attention. Construction was added to fiscal 24. The #1 transportation alternative priority project is also located in Citrus County. It's the Withlacoochee State Trail from Hernando Citrus line to Citrus Marion County line, phase 2. And it's a long trail. There are 29 miles of trail in Citrus County with varying pavement conditions. Phase 1, they identified the poorest condition and it was rebuilt, including mid-block crossing enhancements in Florida City, which, you know, that will help with safety issues. And then phase 2 will continue to be rebuilt and make improvements, and construction is slated for 24. Safe Roads to School priority project is located in Citrus County at Forest Ridge Boulevard from West Lake Beverly Drive to West Culver Court. There was preliminary engineering in 24 and construction was added in 26 for 5-year program. And then a very interesting projects were they were added from the department. They're going to do some provision of grant making for electrical vehicle charger deployments in Hernando County. Exact details of the locations has not been specified, but the general locations will be at US 301 at State Road 50 and US 41 at State Road 50. And they're putting capital and operating grant monies in the work. sidewalk gaps, and we're doing various locations in Hernando County. There's construction in 27 and 28. They're using a new funding source, carbon reduction funding sources. And at Citrus County, they're doing construction in 27.
Thank you. I'm just sorry to interrupt, but we have gone over our time for extra things now, if you will. So if you wouldn't mind keeping it a little bit more high level, just so that we can make sure we have time for everyone.
Absolutely, and the good news is that was the last slide for Hernando Citrus. Okay, that's great. Thank you, and we're very gracious for everything.
Yes, thank you so much. That was wonderful. And we can keep this in mind. And some folks do have commitments right after this that they're gonna have to get to, so we don't want to lose people. Who do we have next?
So Pasco County.
Pasco.
And we're gonna lead off with State Road 52 is in 2 segments. This is a widening from 2 to 4 lanes. This is a continuation of a project that's been underway. We thank the department for this project. We go to the next slide. A roundabout in Dade City, as displayed on the map, also tied into what is currently State Route 52, but will become County Route 52. Next slide, please. The interchange at US 41 and State Route 54, that's on our priority list. And this is a regional project of regional significance. They're going to be looking at this. Next slide, please. And then tying into our friends up north of us in Hernando County, US 301 is broken into a couple of segments, so there'll be that continuous project across the county lines. And you can see it's in 2 segments here. Next slide, please. I do want to take an opportunity, though, to also mention one of our priorities is County Line Road, and we hope to be working on that next year.
Terrific, thank you.
I will go next. We'll go to Bill Quick. Just for our road projects, I'm really happy to see that we're underway with construction on a portion of US 19 to continue the partially controlled access expressway with an interchange at Kirby Road. That construction is beginning this year. The Gateway Expressway has been in the work program for a while. I just wanted to highlight that's a new toll road that will connect to our airport area linking US 19 to I-275 and Ryan Gary Road, and that's going to be open next year. We have worked with FDOT to identify a number of improvements along alternate US 19 intersection improvements between Clearwater and Largo for safety. We have I-275, Yandy to I-375. This project is in design and it's taken out of the work program for construction. So we are still working to get the construction funding back, but at least it's in design. And then 34th Street, FDOT is a great partner on resurfacing this project. It's our first complete streets project that's being funded and construction is underway beginning this year. Next slide. For trails, I'll just highlight a few. If you've driven in Pinellas on US 19, the overpass has just gone up. It's not open yet, but at least the structure is there over US 19 in Clearwater. We have a trail crossing at grade at State Road 60 to provide safety at that intersection on Gulf Bay Boulevard. And we have a new overpass connecting the Courtney Campbell Causeway Trail that's part of our trail network. And we are also doing a trail project on State Road 580, crossing Skinner Boulevard for safety improvements. And that's also a complete street project. For transit, we have continued to fund PSTA vehicle replacements. Those are kicking in beginning this year. And those would be electric vehicle fleet replacements. The Clearwater Multimodal Transit Center that we've talked about just got funded with a RAISE grant and participation from Pinellas County. It's the first significant funding that Pinellas County has provided to transit in memory. And then the Vanpool expansion program is happening, and we also have 34th Street with limited stop express bus service that will go into the service.
Johnny Wong, sorry.
Thank you so much. And now Hillsborough.
Johnny Wong, Hillsborough TPO staff. I want to start by thanking the secretary and his staff because of the 60 projects highlighted, about a third of them were on our tip priority list, which I think is a good sign for the coordination process. Next slide, please. I'm going to be real quick and give a short list of just the projects that have a regional significance, including first, a lane addition and interchange reconstruction on I-75 at Gibsonton Drive out in Riverview. Funds for design have been advanced 1 year from 25 to 24 to expedite delivery of that project. To the right, you see that Hillsborough County was awarded TRIP funds in 24 for construction on Big Bend Road between US 41 and Covington Garden, and then Simmons Loop to US 301. The center of that project is missing because it's already been completed. So when this project is complete, it'll improve access to 75 for the folks out in Sun City Center and just north of Apollo Beach. Next slide, please. Design funds have been programmed in fiscal year 28 for a new bridge on SR 60 over 50th Street and the CSX rail line. That's going to improve regional goods movement, so certainly an important project for Port Tampa Bay. And then finally, $200,000 in surface transportation funds programmed in 28 to support the regional van pool program, and some district funds were added for supporting the transportation management organization coordinating group. That's the TMO if you're tracking acronyms.
Thank you so much. And next is Polk County.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair. Parag Agrawal from Polk TPO. As we know, Polk County is the fastest growing county in the state of Florida and the second fastest growing county in the country. Thanks to FDOT for helping us out to mitigate our traffic issues in the county. This year, I'm just focusing on some of the regional big projects. If we move on. Moving slow on, I'll just focus on the projects. So again, this is a big project over here. We have a Central Polk Parkway. It has two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is basically from 570 to US 17, which will be under construction very soon. The second phase from US 17 to State Route 60. It is in our work program. Around $190 million have been allocated to this second phase of the project from 17 to 60. Moving on. There's a Central Polk Parkway East. Again, I always say Polk County, we have to come up with some better names of the roads. So we have Central Polk Parkway East. Again, US 17 is one of the most congested roadways in Florida. So we are basically looking for some US 47 alternates. And one of the alternates is basically Central Polk Parkway East, which is basically the blue line on this map. Very happy to say around $290 million have been allocated for this project, not for construction, it's only for PD&E and for right of way. Again, these road projects are expensive. Moving on. Again, this is the second phase that you can see. This Central Polk Parkway East will basically connect State Route 60 on the south to all the way Fontana Parkway extension to the north. It will create a better connectivity from Central Polk County to I-4. Moving on, again, Thompson Nursery Road is one of the most important projects for Polk County, trying to have an east-west connection. Around $3 million have been allocated for the $6.4 million, 6.5 mile road project for phase 1. Moving on. Again, the last project which I have on the slide is State Route 544. Again, it was a very expensive project. So what we did, we worked with FDOT to break the projects into different parts. The phase 1 has been planned, right of way has been will be acquired and constructed. The total cost of the project is around $10 million, and it is part of the work program. Again, only the part 1, segment 1, which is from Martin Luther King Boulevard to Avenue Y.
Dave Hutchinson, Sarasota Manatee and Yo. I don't know if we have any slides. We do not, but I would like to give you a brief overview, very brief. We just got the work program about a week ago, so we did not have a chance to prepare formal slides. Our population is now within less than 100,000, less than the Pinellas County population, and we are in between Pinellas and Polk as far as the size of our MPO. Our regional population is about 860,000 now. The work program for Sarasota Manatee County is a little over $1.3 billion. So we really appreciate the partnership with Florida DOT and District 1. We're sorry they're not here today. We do have funding in the new draft tentative work program for construction of the DeSoto Bridge. The design is underway, and that will be a replacement in kind with no capacity improvements. And right-of-way acquisition, if any, would be funded in the next couple of years. And it would just be a minor amount because there aren't any capacity in that project. There's also the Bradenton Palmetto Connector, PD&E, which is funded and underway. They had slowed that down. They expect it to kick off again soon. That could inform the actual construction of the bridge, or it could lead to identifying additional capacity improvements that would become our top priority on our regional list. Because the need for additional capacity between Bradenton and Palmetto has long been established. It just might be easier to replace the aging bridge that has to be replaced at the DeSoto location without trying to add capacity. We would recognize that we have tens of millions of dollars in funding going to Port Manatee and the Sarasota Bradenton International Airport. We have major bridge replacements and interchange projects all up and down I-75. If you drive down there, you're going to experience those projects. We're making a lot of trails progress as well, with several pedestrian overpasses funded, about 4 of them, and we've seen tens of millions of dollars, almost over $100 million worth of resurfacing projects added. The NPO will probably take a look at identifying and priorities for resurfacing projects going forward, because it's such a big part of the work program. And last but not least, safety projects continue to be added to the work program, and those are one of the most important things that we work on. That's all I have. Unless Commissioner Ball would like to say anything else, thank you very much.
Good job.
All right, thank you so much. And there's no action items attached with this one, so we'll go ahead and move on. The next item.
Heather, just make one quick thought.
Oh, yeah.
Share with everybody. Recently, we had one of our local companies called APS do what they call a spray jet technology for resurfacing projects. I really liked it because instead of having a spray tack, have a truck drive over it as it sprays it down, and then you can try to like put the asphalt on the top. It weakens the bond in that just the structure of it. They've developed a machine's been out for about 20 years. They've used it elsewhere. If DOT actually approves it, that actually sprays the tank down. You put the asphalt right over the top of the same type of machine. Then when they put on one lane next to another, there's another seal that combines the 2 joints where they get sealed up as well with a tack. If you're going to do resurfacing projects, I recommend you take a look at the technology. Anybody can do it, and frankly, for a long term, I hope that all the other companies, all the companies in Florida do contract or eventually get to that point. They're not there yet. I don't think they like it on highways as yet, but as far as for all your roads that aren't quite as heavy a traffic, but just an idea to take a look at as well.
Thanks, Jen. All right, thank you. The next item that we have is the 2023 meeting calendar. That's been included just for your reference. There's no action item attached to that. So if you have any questions, you know who to ask. I don't, but I have. And the next meeting for the group will be on March 24th, 2023, 9:30 a.m. in beautiful Pasco County.
And just to clarify, that's a meeting of the TMA leadership group. The SCTPA won't meet until the June time, actually June.
Thank you for that clarification on both. So I hope to soon know which one is which with these calendars. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for your patience. And if there's no business from the body, we are adjourned.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me of Bible. Yes.